am more than willing to just share those. And then in the links below, you'll find either the version I have or the version you should have, either because it's the definitive edition or the standard one that you would find at any bookstore. And again, these are all physical links to physical versions of these books. There's also movies for some of them, but you want to start with the physical book. Again, that tangential feeling the book and being able to touch it, I think is important. And then follow up maybe with a audio recording to keep going, and a digital copy, in that order I would say, of the physical book, audio copy, so you can listen to it in the car, listen to it at work or a gym, and follow along or reinforce some of the things that are being said, right? And then actually read the words so you can imbibe those words. And then a digital copy, I guess, like it's just more handier to have a digital version. But the book, it's where it's at, so that's what we'll be starting with. And I think I'll start with Tolkien. I know more about Lewis, secondly Tolkien, and less about Chesterton, but I think these three men really inform me and shape who I am growing up, especially Lewis. Chesterton obviously came first, and then Lewis and Tolkien were contemporaries. So these are going to be fiction and also nonfiction, and hopefully you guys can relive some of your own memories about reading these books, or maybe get some suggestions out of this as well. Again, this is Raphael Cologne, Mr. C, a layman from Reinforce My Faith, going over my affiliate link GRIFT, going over the C.S. Lewis, Tolkien, and G.K. Chesterton books. And we'll start off with The Hobbit, the classic. In a hole in the ground there lived a hobbit, not a nasty, dirty, wet hole filled with ends of worms and of oozy smells, nor yet a dry, bare, sandy hole with nothing in it to sit down or to eat. It was a hobbit hole, and that means comfort. Yes, the first lines out of the book, the prequel to The Lord of the Rings, as it is now commonly known. My version here is one illustrated by Alan Lee, famous Lord of the Rings illustrator. Let me move the camera here so you can maybe get a little better sense of what's some of the artists' work here. I recommend the annotated Hobbit for the reason that I like deluxe edition of books, and I think it's pretty handy to have if you can't have the paperback. This is also a good option. But the annotated Hobbit has something that other versions do not, unless you bought the original edition. As some of you may know, that Tolkien did change some of the wording, especially when it comes to the riddles in the dark, the part with Gollum and the ring, to make it fit better with what came after in the Lord of the Rings. So when the Lord of the Rings came out and the Hobbit was re-released, that part of the story was slightly changed. So the annotated version actually includes the original wording as well. It has both the updated, revised Hobbit that is commonly available, but also the original one as well. So for those who are fans, and just for purists, I guess also, I mean, that would be the best version to have. Like the Bible, the best version to have is the one that you read. So anyone you can get, even just simple used bookstore paperback, is fine as well. And I would actually start with The Hobbit, not Lord of the Rings, since The Hobbit was written for children. It has I think, an easier stepping into that world. It gets you acclimated to what's going on, and I think it's the best way to experience the world of Middle Earth. Start with The Hobbit, and then from The Hobbit, obviously you would go to Lord of the Rings. I never liked books, since they are really meant to be one story. I never liked them being separate, so I'm always going to suggest the one volume edition. I have here a link for both this edition here from 1993. There's also the standard 50th anniversary edition, which is also good value. And there's also the more deluxe edition. But the reason I like this 1993 edition, it is because the font is, for me, having bad eyesight, it's actually larger. And compared to other editions, without it being advertised as large fonts, this is a really good version of it. So, and it's hardback too. So this is going to be my definitive default edition. I'm not going to trade it in for another edition, really. I might get, if I have, whenever I want a spare edition, those deluxe editions. But I think this is, to me, the definitive edition for me, and it's the one I also suggest, though not the most common one after 1983. And it also, I guess, just if you can see the pictures, they're really based on not even of the animated movie or the live action movie, but just old mythical stereotypes. So that's also a reason why I like it as well, because it doesn't have that connotation. Um, so yeah, the Lord of the Rings, perennial classic. Out of all the Tolkien works that I'm going to show, obviously, if you're only going to get one, just get the Lord of the Rings one volume edition, so you can get the Fellowship of the Rings, the Two Towers, and Return of the King. I don't know why you would buy them separately. I guess just portability. But yes, if you're going to get one volume edition, get the 50th anniversary, or get this one just because, again, if you're like me, you like the typeset to be nice and large. This looks like it's 12 or 14 font, if I were to guess. So the Lord of the Rings from Tolkien, almost an obvious choice. And the next one would be the prequel to the Hobbit, the prequel of how the creation story of Middle Earth. But to me, it is the Silmarillion is very tricky and hard to get into. Although it has great concepts like Morgoth, or just in the beginning how all the angels, or forgot what they're called, and how they all were singing in harmony, and how one of them had a discordant note and threw everyone off. I think just that's how beautiful imagery of creation, everything it's in order and in its proper place, but then something decided to upset that order and go through his own will and his own pride. So obviously a reference to Lucifer. So I have here the Silmarillion. There's different editions. This edition is the one, as you'll see coming up next, part of a box set of Tolkien. I don't really have to see a need to get any other editions. Maybe if I want to get that illustrated edition, which I also from 2022, which I also have as in the link below. But I think this is, at least for me, good enough to have this in my collection. And this is part of, I have here the older version of the Tolkien Fantasy Tales box set. Here is the actual, how they look like. The Tolkien Reader, Silmarillion, Unfinished Tales. I can't read that right there. Sir Gawain and the Green Knight from the King Arthur Tales. So I think this is a good foundation, and I would get definitely the one volume Lord of the Rings, the Hobbit, and then this will be my third. This set here will be a third choice. I love compilations and I like definitive editions of things, and this is a good bang for your buck if you can find it. And they also have, as you can see there, an updated version, which the cover is a little bit more muted than this psychedelic. I think this is 2003, so when the last Return of the King movie came out. So this is from that box set. So it's pretty cool. And I guess some of the unfinished tales there, if I can read here, are it has Adventures of Tom Bombadil. So for those who are into him, Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, from King Arthur's Round Table, and I read that in high school, but it wasn't Tolkien's version. But this is Tolkien's version of it, and if we're gonna read a version, why not read Tolkien's version? So I think it's very fitting, and just it's kind of odd that it's part of this box set. I would think another Middle Earth tale would be there. I almost said Middle East, but it's pretty good. So I'm gonna put this here. I can put it away later. And the next book in the Tolkien series that I have is Beowulf. So talking about obviously this poem from the medieval period here, and its various adaptations. This version is, let me see here. It tries to keep the notes and make it really be poetic, and it also have the notes by Professor Tolkien. So it gives you good, nice commentary, and I think this is a fantastic version. Maybe it's not the default version if you're a Beowulf scholar of this tale, but I think it is either number 2 at least, and this is going to be probably the only one that I buy, Beowulf from Tolkien, the Tolkien version. So This is also a fantastic buy, especially if you want to buy books about Great Western civilization and culture. And finally, I don't have any of these books, but I strongly recommend, and they'll be part of my future library. That is Letters of J.R.R. Tolkien, the expanded and revised edition. It's always troubling for revisions or new versions of old material to come out, because they tend to be woke and be changed to be suit a modern audience. But this one is fine. What it does is just add some letters that were not part of the original collection, and it still keeps the number of the original, because each letter was numbered when they were first released. So these are also numbered now by, if you had letter 11 and they came one that came before or after, would be 10B or 10C. So it makes sense in terms of referencing the letter. So it really gets you into the mind of Professor Tolkien and him being a Catholic and so forth. So Chesterton and Tolkien were Catholics, and Anglican was C.S. Lewis, to bring that apart. So they were all high churchmen. Just wanted to bring that up. And the Jerusalem Bible, only because J.R.R. Tolkien worked on it and then specifically translated the book of Jonah, at least most of it. It's only 4 chapters, the book of Jonah in the Bible. And they have never, to my knowledge, released the book of Jonah as its own separate book. They tried to, but I think there was copyright reasons. So you can't, a legal version, official version of it. So you have to actually buy the whole Jerusalem Bible, the original, not the New Jerusalem translation, but the Jerusalem Bible. I have it in the link, so you can, if you want to buy the whole thing for like 14, 15 bucks, might as well get the Bible, right? And this is a decent version of the English Bible. And when you read the book of Jonah, it's going to be a Tolkien translation, or translated by him, or mostly by him. So I think that's a great find. And you can also get the PDF. You can read it yourself, those 4 chapters, to get a sense of what Tolkien does differently. I think that one of the big differences, he translates Lord God, or Lord in capital letters. He just says Yahweh God. So that's one difference that his translation of the book of Jonah has. So yeah, those are at least my selections of what the Tolkien, essential Tolkien books. And hopefully in the future I can show you the Jerusalem Bible and the letters to Tolkien in my collection when I have them physically, but I do not at the moment. And now we move on to C.S. Lewis. C.S. Lewis. I have to say that his signature collection of Lewis, that includes, let's see here, Mere Christianity, the Screwtape Letters, A Grief Observed, Miracles, The Great Divorce, Abolition of Man, The Problem of Pain, and The Four Loves, is, out of all these books, my own personal must-have. Well, I guess if you don't have a Bible, to have Jerusalem Bible, right? But all the books which I'm going to talk about today, the signature collection by C.S. Lewis is the must-have, the essential one. Only if it's just by Mere Christianity and you get the other books as bonus, right? I think there's a version that has Mere Christianity and the Screwtape Letters, but this one has 8 works. This is an older version, so it's harder to find. And to be honest, it's kind of too big. It just crosses over the line of it being too large for me. So it's more like a tabletop book. But the new versions that are hardcover and also softback are decent size. They are about the size of I don't have one here, but just this, but thicker. So it's very, very manageable. So I would definitely, and those are the ones in the link. So the one in the link, the signature classic, and that one includes the Four Loves. This one doesn't include the Four Loves. So they added Four Loves as a 8th book or 7th book. Actually, the 8th book. There's 7 books here, and it has 8 books in the new version of the signature classics. The only thing I would add is that, well, I say 8 or 9 books because Screwtape Letter has a sequel. Screwtape Proposes a Toast, and that's added in there. Just you don't say it. It's like a bonus that they don't mention it. But if you look through it, the sequel to, or the follow up to Screwtape Letters is actually found in that collection. Wish it would advertise it. They could have like its own 9 books or 9 works of Lewis. So it's fantastic. Mere Christianity, the definitive traditional apologetic work. I quote from it all the time, or at least I think about it all the time. trying to think of one up on the top of my head. As I was an in-person teacher, when I talk about the Old Testament, I would mention things like God selected a particular people. He spent several centuries hammering into their heads what sort of God that he was, that there was only one of him, and that he cared about right conduct. These people were the Jews, and the Old Testament is an account of the hammering process. Things of that nature that are just still with me. I love his chapter on time, especially at the end when you read at the end. It says, "If this didn't help you, just leave it, just drop it, just move on." If my conversation about time is not that essential, but uh, obviously, Mere Christianity was, I think, 4 lectures, radio lectures that got turned into a book, and it's still a formidable work. And I think it's like a traditional definitive work of apologetics. Christian apologetics have come a long way since then, but I still think it's still a good source of information. The Screwtape Letters, a parody novel written from the point of view of a demon trying to ensnare an individual, and you see how demonic activity might think, how it gets you from, instead of getting you from a big sin, it gets you from smaller sins, little smaller venial sins that turn into a big mortal sin. So I think that's also fantastic. A Grief Observed is a story about the death of his wife, Joy. Miracles is about just the supernatural aspects of how to explain to miracles, especially to a modern man and a modern audience. We have The Great Divorce that follows this theme about heaven, hell, and free will. And The Problem of Pain is the other one I would mention. Is the problem of pain having to do with, if there's such a thing as a good God, why is there suffering in the world? And his attempt to tackle that. So it's like I said, it is fantastic. It is the best bang for your buck. It is one top 5, top 2 books after top 3, maybe after a good Bible translation, RSB Catholic edition, after a good catechism, maybe a compilation of the Baltimore Catechism with St. Pius Catechism. This will be my 3rd Christian book, I think. Although maybe Fundamentals of the Faith or the other one that's always getting confused, and they usually get paired together. Sources of Dogma, I think. It is. Let's just call it top five Christian books. So always will be in part of me and in great depth to his work. So, and here I'm going to move on to another compilation collection. This is called The Timeless Writings of C.S. Lewis. And Timeless Writings, yes. The version I have was an older version. I think I have the link for not only this version but also the books that are included here, which is the Pilgrim's Regress. Kind of like his take on the Pilgrim's Progress, the Protestant tale about just journeying into heaven. The Christian Reflections on God on the Dock, which had to do with voting or something, but it's a dock as in the docket of a judicial, yes, of a legal system. So again, these are 3 great works of Lewis that are not found in his signature collection. And I think they are very important. And especially Pilgrim's Regress. It's especially, I would say you have to read the Pilgrim's Progress to really get most out of that one. But after you read Pilgrim's Progress, you can, the sequel or another take, go read the Pilgrim's Regress. And Christian Reflections and also God in the Dock they're like collections, anthologies. So even within this is a collection of a collection. So C.S. Lewis on different topics. So so it's a good buy and almost like a follow-up to the signature classics if you're looking for more C.S. Lewis theology content. Next one is what they call the inspirational writings of C.S. Lewis. So another compilation. This one has Surprised by Joy, Reflection on the Psalms, The Four Loves, and The Business of Heaven. My version, if I open it up here, it's actually, they put it backwards. It's actually it's not correct. So the binding, it's all off kilter. But You wouldn't know that. So if I'm reading the book, people think I'm actually not reading it. They think I'm reading it backwards, but this is actually right side up. But anyways, that's just a printing mistake. But anyways, this compilation includes Four Loves, which is now unnecessary. You're getting it twice if you get the new version of the Signature Classics. So you're getting this one again. But still, even with this compilation, Surprised by Joy, Reflections on the Psalms, and the Business of Heaven are also what would you call it? Themes that are worth exploring. And Reflections on the Psalms, especially as 150 Psalms are a lot of joy and a lot of deep wisdom are found in them. And C.S. Lewis takes are practical and yet enlightening. So I think you'll find a lot of use for this. The next book from the C.S. Lewis collection is, if you're only going to get one book from C.S. Lewis, get his nonfiction, get his Signature Classics that I mentioned. And then if you only get one fiction book, well, it's really going to be a tie between Chronicles of Narnia and the Space Trilogy. But I think Narnia edges it out. I'd like one volume collection. So if you find this in hardcover, go get it. This is still a great paperback edition. It just has the movie cover, which, whatever. Any other issue that's slight negative, it's like it goes in chronological order. So it takes The Magician's Nephew first, as opposed to The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, which most people you talk to, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe should be read first, because the philosopher's nephew, what do you call it? The Magician's Nephew kind of ruins some of the surprise. So besides that, just keep in mind when you're reading it to your kids or to yourself when you're reading it, just start with Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. Kind of like if you watch Star Wars, you want to watch A New Hope, Empire, and then go back to the prequels, Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, Revenge of the Sith, and then Return of the Jedi. Maybe I'll talk about in a future pod. Anyway, so that's the version with the cover with the lion, Aslan. I think it's the better cover, and I think I both have a link for the soft cover and the hardcover. So we can't go wrong. This should be a part of any traditional Christian household here in the fiction. And you saw it a little briefly earlier, and that is the Space Trilogy, or the Ransom Trilogy. We have the Out of the Silent Planet, Perelandra, and the Hideous Strength. The Hideous Strength has been getting more notice in our circles. It's the one that's less has to do with space. It happens on Earth, but it really talks about the I would say magisterial state, but the managerial state and complex. So a lot of James Burnham in there, and academia and scientism. So it's really fascinating with Out of the Silent Planet and Perelandra being more having to do with retelling of the Genesis 3 of Genesis 1, 2, and 3 of the fall on other planets. Very interesting, a little bit trippy. So that's why Narnia, what is mythological as opposed to sci-fi, to me, it's a more accessible book than the Space Trilogy. But the Space Trilogy should be, for older kids. I think Narnia, it's really late elementary, and this one should be late middle school, or depending on someone's reading level, right? Or even high school or any age. But yeah, it's a good choice as well, and especially getting the 3 as opposed to getting them separately. So get the Space Trilogy. This is my recent purchase, Till We Have Faces. So I have not actually read of it yet. It's reimagining of the ancient Greek myth of Cupid and Psyche, so from the perspective of Psyche's sister, Auriel. So I have there the cover of the new with the red. That's the new version. This is an older version of it, but it's fine because it doesn't really add, new version doesn't add anything to it, any annotations or anything. So any version you can get is fine, and it's usually not found part of a compilation, so you buy it separately. So Till We Have Faces is a myth retold would be, if you're doing Lewis fiction, Narnia collection, Space Trilogy collection, and then Till We Have Faces. And he has some other writings, The Dark Tower and other writings. I think that's the actual title of it. But to me, that'll be the go-to in terms of this fiction. The Quotable Lewis is a book about Lewis, but not really by him. It just takes different subject matters and it says, what does C.S. Lewis say about, let's just pick one at random. I have here moral relapse, and it's here taken from a letter written to C.S. Lewis. And it says, one of the worst things about moral relapse to me is that it throws such a shadow back on the time before during which you had thought you were getting on quite well. Having found oneself for the 100th time back where one started, it seems so obvious that one has never really moved at all, and that what seemed progress was only a dream or the irrelevant result of circumstances or physical conditions. So it's really powerful stuff depending on subject matter. You can read it like, I guess, like a book from, you know, from on front end to back, but or you can just peruse some covers and see what C.S. Lewis taught on different topics. I like different quotable books, whether it's Poe, Shakespeare, Twain. No, I'm a little lukewarm on Twain. Quotable Lewis is awesome and should be part of your collection. Once you got most of his basic works, this would be one that I would recommend. Two more for Lewis. Well, I guess this is my last slide on Lewis, but the only one that I have is Nicolosis, Professor Nicolosis. What's the Question of God, C.S. Lewis, Sigmund Freud, a debate, God, love, sex, and meaning of life. This is a fictional account of a narrative that they concocted of C.S. Lewis meeting with Sigmund Freud, and what they think about from their perspective about different topics. Obviously, Freud being a Jewish atheist, psychiatrist or psychoanalyst, and then Lewis being a man of faith, a Christian man. And they have a great, in the early 2000s, they came up with a great documentary in the, I was going to say BBC, but the American version, PBS, of The Question of God. And now this year or next year, they're going to come up with a actual movie that fictionalizes that account with Anthony Hopkins playing not C.S. Lewis. He's plays Sigmund Freud, and somebody else is going to play Lewis, the villain in Watchmen, which I spoiled Watchmen. But anyways, which is funny because Anthony Hopkins played C.S. Lewis in Shadowlands in the early 90s or mid 90s. So it's funny he's going to play Sigmund Freud. He's also played Methuselah and St. Paul as well. So he's had other biblical roles there, Anthony Hopkins. Anyways, Peter Kraft and Ken Burns, who I think helps with the documentary, really talks highly about this book. And I think it's just awesome extra book if you're looking for C.S. Lewis content. And I'm going to put it here. And I'm just going to enlarge my screen for a sec and talk about the collected letters of C.S. Lewis. There's actually 3 volumes. They're just rare. Volume 1 and 2 are rare, and volume 3 is even rarer. So I think they're planning on re-releasing those probably, just because how rare they are. There has to be some copyright reason why. And my guess is some of those have been gobbled up in the Quotable Lewis and some of the other releases as well. So you probably find a lot of repeated material there. So maybe that's why it's also not meant. There's also a discarded image. An introduction to medieval and Renaissance literature has to have one of the worst covers imaginable. You see there with the gloves, terrible cover. I do have that as a link below. Besides the terrible cover, it really talks about a subject matter has come up in our right-wing circles, that is re-enchantment and that loss of spirituality or the awe and wonder of the world, the spiritual aspect, that it's not as common to us as it once were, where you go out in the woods and you feel nature and you feel the presence of God. Not to get too pantheistic about it, but you know that there's something behind the material world. There's something more than just the material reality. So it talks about how modernity has really tried to get rid of that since the Enlightenment, especially since our post-World War II regime. So really going back to the ancients and specifically the medieval periods, C.S. Lewis talks about that. So I think it's just an important topic and then something to realize. That's one of the things that modernity has robbed us, or post-modernity, whatever age we live in now, that we no longer have supernatural, spiritual aspect of the world and how it's alive and how it's God created it for us and how it's vital to our who we are. We're not meant to be in technology all the time. It really is about touching grass and being a better stewards and being gardening and being part of nature. So I think it's a really deep subject matter. Next is Chesterton. Chesterton has Heretics, Orthodoxy, and Everlasting. Man, I have only 2 books from Chesterton. As I'll show you. I'll just show you right now and then talk about them in a second. And they're both collections from Ignatius Press, Volume 1 and Volume 2. I'll talk about it in a bit. But the reason I have this specific book here, the 3 Apologetics of G.K. Chesterton, that has Heretics, Orthodoxy, and the Everlasting Man, because if you're only going to get one book that features Chesterton that's nonfiction for his theological work, I would say get this book. This is the book to get because it has his Heretics, Orthodoxy, and the Everlasting Man. And Heretics, really, it's about contemporary thinkers and movements, highlights what he sees as their errors and inconsistencies, explores how thinkers deviate from what he considers to be the truths, particularly matters of religion, morality, and philosophy. Orthodoxy really presents his own spiritual journey that he went through to reach the Orthodox Christianity and eventually Catholicism. And it also talks about traditional beliefs and a counterpoint to that skepticism that's been going on at his time that's still prevalent to today. And I guess in a sense, we have the Everlasting Man, which is arguing that man and the divine and how Christianity has shaped reality and his worldview from it. And Chesterton really did help C.S. Lewis in his conversion journey. So I think that it's also worth a read. Well, my main guys are Tolkien and Lewis, and then Chesterton, but a lot of people are big Chesterton fans, and I think this is out of all the books, if you're going to pick one Chesterton book, pick this one. The formatting is pretty good, at least from what I saw, because I don't have it, but I saw the digital version. So pick a copy of that one. The one I have is because I plan to get most of the volumes in this collection. I just started with volume 1 and 2. The collected works, this one contains Heretics, Orthodoxy, and the Blatchford controversies. And this is him talking to Robert Blatchford, and who was a communist, I believe. Was he? God and My Neighbor, he came up with that, and he really almost like a quarrel with him. So he tries to answers him in his own way. So this is a good starting point for his collection. I got volume 1, and then volume 2 has The Everlasting Man plus his take on St. Francis of Assisi. We most think about St. Francis of Assisi dealing with animals and his take care of nature, but he also had a mystical aspect. So he talks about that, and Thomas Aquinas, the Thomistic philosopher, the ultimate force to be reckoned with. So I think these 2 are a great collection. And lastly here, these 3 books are eventually ones that I want to get as well. In Defense of Sanity is just a collection of his essays and other smaller works compiled into one. And then we have the Father Brown Mysteries, which is what he's known for in fiction writing. And then we have a Christian fiction collection that compiles a couple of other ones. So I feel that if I get these 3 books along with my other volume 1 and volume 2 of his collected works, I'm really have the essential works of Chesterton with me. And from there, if I'm really want to get into it, I can get into other collections as well, or books. But I think having those, you really are 80 or 90% of what he is about. So though again, compared to Tolkien and especially C.S. Lewis, I know less about Chesterton, but I am working my way through him. So, and I guess I want to end with my big old slide here that showcases the books that I recommended. These are all found in the description below, where you can click and go see the link and buy them or not, but at least or check them out somewhere else, or keep them in your own wish list. That way you can find them in used bookstores or wherever you find them. The best thing to do is obviously to read them. Thank you to guys for joining me on this journey and going through my bookshelf that I have available. Reinforce My Faith is continuing with videos and coming up with courses, and just a place where you can, what the title suggests, reinforce your faith, specifically Catholics, and more specifically those who have gone through the confirmation process, or those lifelong Catholics who just want to have some apologetic background for their beliefs. So hopefully we are going to form, not hopefully, a community that answers those questions, and ones that really, there's a lot of merchants. I was talking, somebody mentioned this, that there was a lot of not conspiracy merchants, but merchants of bad news in the church. And that could get old. And it's good to know what's going on in the church, but I like to stick to what's true, good, and beautiful, what has worked. Let's stick to those. Let's bitterly cling to those institutions and learn more about our faith and just get it strong and live in joy and hope and truth, and seek the true, the good, and the beautiful wherever it's found. And I think our current world is too cynical, is too pessimistic. We need to change that. We need to change that. And I think that a quote that comes from to mind that I'm going to butcher, but here I go. Cynicism and irony are the songs of a bird who has come to love its own cage. Cynicism and irony are the songs of a bird who has come to love its own cage. So we want to get rid of that. We want to be part of the solution, and we want to be joyful people, not being naive, but joyful people who see the obstacle as the way and are able to move forward. So thank you so much for joining me on this journey. I'm going to have timestamps, that way you can jump and go to the selection you want me to talk about or you're interested in. And hopefully this has helped you out. And I hope to see you guys soon with other theological topics, maybe some even pop culture topics as well. So take care. God bless. This has been Mr. C, Mr. Cologne at reinforcemyfaith.com. Seek the true, the good, and the beautiful. Take care, guys. Subscribe, like, and share.